I believe you could be a Trojan horse. I believe that someone who spent the better part of the last election supporting Biden and Kamala Harris all of a sudden sees the light after Donald Trump wins an election. I mean, you're not that much different from Mark Zuckerberg and Jeff Bezos.
Well, I know that I have a lot to prove, but give me a chance to prove that. Don't shut the door. I have a lot to offer, and you're not going to find a harder worker. I'm already working hard to make sure that we nail the midterms, because this is absolutely pivotal. We can't go back to the woke and the trans insanity. I am done with that.
Well, the woman that you just heard, conservative Eric Bolling, accused of being a Trojan horse for MAGA, is a former fundraiser for the Democratic Party. Her name is Lindy Li. If you're politically engaged, you've probably seen her interviews on cable news and lots of other different shows. And after helping Joe Biden and later Kamala Harris raise millions of dollars for their campaigns, including Biden's re-election campaign, Li went on to defect from the Democratic Party and support Donald Trump. Lindy Li, it's a pleasure to have you.
Thank you so much for having me. You guys, I've been watching you since I was out of college, so this is very surreal for me.
That's awesome. All right. Well, I wanted to kind of start off by kind of understanding how you kind of got to the place you're at right now. So let me start by kind of giving a little bit of the explanation you provided on Piers Morgan's show, and then I'll clarify what I'm asking you specifically. Let's take a look at why you soured on a portion of the Democratic Party back in 2016.
Ideologically, it's a massive, massive move to go from somebody who supports Joe Biden and Kamala Harris to somebody who supports Donald Trump.
I've always been on the conservative wing of the party, and there's a paper trail. 5 years ago, I went to war with the Bernie Bros. That's how I emerged on the public scene. That's how I got my start. I, as a conservative, refused to vote for Bernie Sanders because he went against everything I believed in.
Okay, so you were against the Bernie wing of the Democratic Party, which I identify as like the economic populist wing of the Democratic Party. Wing is a little generous. I would say there's like maybe 2 people in the Democratic Party who identify that way. But you also soured on the economically or fiscally conservative but socially far left wing of the Democratic Party. Let's take a look at that.
When I first became a Democrat, it was actually pre-Obama. We believed in middle-class values, fiscal responsibility, like moderation. We didn't think that biological men should be in women's sports. That's a fairly recent development, I think. Like in the past 5 years, I'm not in favor of that. I think that's absolutely just lunacy. These are recent developments. The woke and the trans insanity, the DEI stuff, I didn't sign up for that. I just didn't, and I was terrified of vocalizing my opposition.
So, who did you like in the Democratic Party? Because those are the 2 separate wings. And I'm curious if you might have just always identified as conservative, but wasn't really fully self-aware. What do you think?
First of all, thank you so much for asking questions with respect. Over the last couple of weeks, I've been kind of on the edge of my seat waiting to be attacked because of my views. Thank you so much for being gracious about it. As the years went on, I don't think I really like anyone. I most closely identify with my friend, Governor Josh Shapiro, but even he is to my left on several issues. I think it's weird because you and I have gone through similar experiences. On the Sean Ryan show, I talked about how I was assaulted just by standing outside. I mean, that's something that you've been through as well. And it didn't just happen once, it happened several times in a progressive run city. We have an extremely left-leaning DA who's funded by George Soros, and he doesn't prosecute minor crimes, and it results in unlivable streets. And this is the state of American cities today. I mean, it's just one of the many reasons why I decided to leave. It's been extremely hard. This is not easy. If I wanted an easy life, if I wanted peace, I wouldn't have done any of this. But it was necessary. I no longer fit into this party, into this cult.
Yeah, Lindy, I'm curious, as a conservative Democrat, why were you so animated by the Democrats in the first place? Why go through the significant effort of raising money for them?
This is just my entire life. I grew up in the age of Obama. He was elected in 2008. I was 17 years old. And I remember being just so ecstatic, so overjoyed that this would be era of hope and change, and obviously we were quickly disillusioned, but it was my most formative era. It was my default position. I grew up in suburban Pennsylvania where the default was, moderation, social, conservative Democrats. And that's essentially what the collar counties of Pennsylvania are known for. It's a swing area. And I didn't really have a reason to question my entire belief system until the last couple of years. And this took me a long time to come here, but over the last couple of years, it didn't just happen suddenly, as people say. This has been a very gradual process, and it's also been deeply personal to me. And one thing that I've never said before is something that happened to me over the course of this past decade. I was put on birth control in 2018 because of health issues, and it completely upended my life.
How so?
I really never said this before, but it's really had such a traumatic and tremendous impact on my thinking. I feel like I wasted 5 years of my life because I was on birth control. And when I decided to come off it in May 2023, I felt like I reclaimed my life and realized that conservatives were right about birth control. It completely hijacks your hormones. It makes you extremely anxious. And I would just expect it to just take it without question. I tried to express my concerns to my doctor, but she was living in this liberal ideology where you could just medicate yourself to recovery. But now that I've been off it for 2 years, I feel like I'm a new woman. I finally have full control over my mind. And I'm finally free to be who I am without being shackled.
So Lindy, I'm sympathetic to what you're saying. Look, I do not, my body does not respond well to hormonal birth control, but that had nothing to do with my political identity, right? And where I stand on specific political issues. Now, I feel alienated from the Democratic Party because I first of all, I don't even know what the Democratic Party at this moment represents. They sometimes run on these big, bold policies, never deliver. And for me, I am very much economically left wing. I agree with you on some of the extremities of what's happened to the Democratic Party in recent years, but I actually view that as a symptom of the corporate cash flowing into these campaign coffers. And then you have like this party that essentially is similar to the Republicans in wanting to pursue policies that are way more beneficial to corporate interests and the elite in this country. And so what do they campaign on and what do they actually do when they're in power? They lean heavily into some of these social issues and they get more and more extreme, every election cycle. And in the end, they went too far and people kind of turned their backs on the party. And that's how I kind of view the situation. So when I look at the political landscape, I personally feel homeless because the Republican Party isn't really economically left. And the Democratic Party, I don't know what they stand for, but I know where I stand on the issues. And I'm trying to kind of figure out what your real political identity is outside of your personal experiences.
Sorry. If I were to boil it down, I would identify myself as a conservative environmentalist. I care deeply, deeply about the environment. It's like my reason for being almost. I'm a dedicated environmentalist and have been my entire life. It's my #1 issue. I do want to say one thing though, having been on the inside, another reason why I had to leave was the deception on many different issues. I saw that they were lying about Biden's age. And when I did in 2022, that's when they first started really lying about it. Like gun-ho, aggressively lying about it. I leaked to the press that they were. And I did everything I could. But you would be ostracized, you would be destroyed if you dared to say that Biden had cognitive decline. They just would not allow you to say it. You couldn't even question it internally. But that's all donors were talking about. All of us knew what was going on. It was like an emperor has no clothes situation. And then we all had to pretend that Biden was just some like God, this demigod who was so magnanimous and couldn't do wrong. And then he leaves and on the last day pardons his entire family. It's just so destructive to all of our institutions and undermines any arguments about Trump being corrupt when you can just point to Biden doing the same thing essentially. Yeah. So I'm just sick and tired of the blatant hypocrisy, the excommunication tactics, the fact that you can't ask any questions. I tried to reform the party from within, but they wouldn't have it. They banned me. The first moment, like within a week of me asking questions, I was taken off all the lists. And at that time, I was just asking questions. I wasn't even criticizing, and they wouldn't even hear it.
So Lindy,
it was just unbelievable that they were so quick to ostracize me just for raising questions after I raised millions for them, after I organized, after I gave everything. I gave everything I had to the party. But even over this past year, my mind was starting to change. I just didn't want anything to do with much, a lot of their policies.
Yeah, Lindy, I'm continue to be curious about the fundraising, because it wouldn't have occurred to me to become a fundraiser at all for either party. So how did that come about? Where did you raise the money from? Why did you go into that? Why did you go in that direction?
First, I want to say once and for all that I wasn't paid a single dime. People say that I was a consultant or, I was just grifting off the Democratic Party. I'm a donor. I give. I raise money and I give. I do not take. I haven't been paid a single dime. I did get like care packages with like cookies and stuff. I guess if you count that as payment, then fine. I don't even eat cookies. I gave them away. But I was not paid to do this. I did this because I wanted to. They recruited me in 2022. They came over to my home, actually. It was pretty aggressive. And they asked me to, because I ran for Congress and I was able to raise a sizable sum then. So they saw that I had a record. They recruited me to be a part of the National Finance Committee. And you had to raise millions of dollars to qualify for that. And that became my world, like my friends. And I'm kind of introvert. They were just my entire world. Yeah. They were, the only friends I knew, essentially. It's actually kind of sad. And that I've had to rethink everything.
Yeah. So that it sounds a little skull and bones. They tap you on the shoulder. Okay, we're going to ask you to raise money.
It's very one-on-one. And having been recruited, I then recruited others. So it is very skull and bones. It's actually a great analogy. And so they recruit you and then you recruit your friends. And it's kind of this pyramid scheme.
Wow.
And then the higher you go, the more access you have. And so I ended up raising millions.
Wait, Lindy, that's super important. So look, obviously you run in a wealthy circle, right? Like if I went to go recruit money for my friends, I'd raise $50, $75, maybe a couple of them, right? And then God bless, et cetera. But so that's interesting that if we're being honest about it, in this wealthy class of folks, they're getting recruited for the Democratic Party, the Republican Party. That's like a common occurrence that the rest of us are totally unaware of. So that's already interesting. But you said
I guess it's normal to me, so I don't even realize it.
Yeah, so that's so normal to you. For the rest of us, we're totally unfamiliar with that. And it feels like there's a little bit of a Scientology kind of thing going on here where you move up the ranks. So if you move up the ranks, what extra access do you get?
I wish I could show, I actually have a PDF that details exactly what you get. For example, at the convention. What'd you say?
Can you send that to us, that PDF?
Can I send it to you after and you can show it to me?
Of course.
Okay, I don't know. It's somewhere in my emails. But let me just describe it now. At the convention, there are different gradations. Like if you were to raise 100,000, I think it was like, you get to go to an event with the president, like the bare minimum. But if you raised 2 million, I think was the highest. You got like your VIP skybox. You got your own lounge. You got to meet privately with Harris after her speech. They laid it out so carefully for you. And even at the time, I was like, isn't this like blatant pay to play? I even raised concerns. I was like, you don't want this floating around, do you? Because they laid it out so clearly. It was like legalized bribery.
Yeah,
and
that's exactly what it is.
Wrong at the time too. But I'm sure both parties do it. I don't think I haven't obviously seen the Republican. I wasn't part of the Republican convention, but I'm assuming they had something similar.
Yeah, Lindy, there's absolutely no question that both parties do it. Yes, 100%. They both do it, no question. That's partly why they're called a uniparty. Which leads me to my last question. I'm genuinely curious about this too, Lindy. So why go all the way? Like, why not? Okay, like for example, I'm horrified by Democratic Party leadership. You say you'd get, excommunicated, et cetera, if you challenged Biden's age and competence. I lived all that. I did it. I excommunicated in every possible way, et cetera. But that didn't make me like Trump anymore. So like, Biden's terrible, Harris was terrible, the corruption in the Democratic Party is terrible, but the corruption in the Republican Party is at a minimum just as terrible. So why go all the way to Trump and MAGA?
First, I didn't intend for any of this to happen. I was recruited by the Republican Party. I guess this is kind of like what were you saying before?
Well, they're smart. Can I just interject before you finish? Because I do want to hear what you have to say. But Republicans understand how to build power. And so while Democrats can't wait to purge you, Republicans are waiting to take you in because they want to build coalitions and they want to win. And I think that's what happened in this last election cycle. So can you talk a little bit about how they recruited you? What do you mean by that?
It happened almost immediately. By the way, over the last couple of weeks, though, I've had to take a step back because the far right fringe of the Republican Party, honestly, it's been miserable. It's probably been the most difficult time of my life. And this past week, I was under so much stress, I was like spitting blood. So I'm not even sure. I'm in a very difficult place right now. And as you said, I'm kind of, I'm without a home. You know, on the one hand, I'm being attacked for leaving, but how do you stay in an abusive relationship? And then the family that I'm trying to join is abusing me too.
Well, Lindy, let me just give you a word of advice, because I'm obviously going through something very similar because I disagree with some of what's been going on with the Democratic Party. But I think what guides me is my own moral foundation, but also where I stand principally on the issues. And so if my principles guide me, I'm not gonna be wooed by either political party. And so if for the time being I'm politically homeless, it does suck, but I'd rather be an independent voter and make decisions as the elections come rather than, constantly declare my loyalty to the Democrats when time and time again, they've disappointed me at best or infuriated me with their corruption at worst.
Yeah, or the Republicans.
Yeah.
But Lindy, I just want to go back and let you finish. So how did they recruit you?
A number of people in the leadership reached out to me very graciously, in a very human way that I never got from the Democrats. And I've been with the Democrats for 15 years. I never got the amount of, it was just like, they understood these are individuals. I don't want to, put a target on their backs because they get harassed because of me. But they reached out to me because I did see that I was in pain. And it's been very hard. And I do want to say, I know exactly where I stand on issues. The problem is I'm kind of dead in the center.
I think a lot of Americans are.
I'm sorry?
I think a lot of Americans are.
Right, so it's very difficult, and I'm in in Philadelphia where there's a 1 to 7 or 1 to 8 voter registration. No one talks to me anymore because they're just so so shocked that I'm conservative. So, but again, it's just been very difficult.
Lindy,
I don't know what else to do really, other than to just keep telling the truth and just being who I am.
Can I ask you?
It's just been very harrowing that people lie about me, and it's hard to prove a counterfactual.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry.
Yeah, look, been there. So we know how you feel. People lie about us all the time, and then if you try to prove them wrong, they say, "Oh, you're being defensive," and it goes in loops, right? So, but I'm curious about the other thing that you said. How has the far right been terrible to you?
If I vocalize their lies, I give them more airtime, but I'm sure you can they say just these very despicable things about me that are entirely not true. And they will never forget some of them. Most of them have been amazing. I just want to say, but there's this fringe that just can never forgive me for being who I am. And they're upset that I'm getting airtime and they're not. They feel like I'm jumping the line. They even said so. This is not me extrapolating or imagining. They said this. They said, we've been MAGA this entire time, but why are you putting this person on air? And she's just been here for a little while. And so they feel like I usurped their role. And I just want to say that I'm not here to take anything from anybody. We can all coexist. I don't want a job in the Trump administration. You couldn't pay me to work in the government. I'm okay with being who I am. I don't need to be on anyone's payroll. I just want to be myself. I care about the environment. I care about social conservative values. That's pretty much it. I care about our country. I would do anything for America. And so for these people to accuse me of being a traitor to our country is just so obscene. It blows my mind.
Lindy,
sometimes I'm just stunned. I'm just stunned that's happening.
Look, did it get racial? Again, it's not everybody. You're just those folks.
Yes, I can't even say it because it's just so horrible. And if I say, if you're, as the political trope is if you're explaining or losing, and I don't. It's like the Streisand effect. I don't even want to repeat it. It's so bad.
Yep, I get it. So I want to come back to the final question that I had theoretically, it was final back then, which is but why then race for either side? Why not just say, hey, look, these MAGA guys aren't for me either, and the Democrats aren't for me, and I'm in no man's land, and I'll wait for someone that resonates with me, but I'm not going to go help MAGA because there's a lot of things I disagree with them on.
Well, I agree with them basically on almost every social issue, I think, except the environment. And right now, this is also just something that I happen to be really good at and enjoy. It's just what I do. It's just very easy. I know people say that fundraising is very hard, but I happen to have a really, it's just very enjoyable. It's like a game. It's almost like gamification for me. I've been doing it for like a decade. I did it for my university before I entered politics. It's just something that I do. It's just like, it's just fun for me. I know that
I can tell you're good at it, Lindy. I can tell you're good at it. And I don't begrudge you for enjoying something that you're good at doing. I would say though that it's likely that you're feeling what you're feeling right now and being politically homeless because of how much that money has destroyed our political system and incentivized our politicians on both sides of the political aisle to basically F us day in and day out on behalf of their corporate donors. So I think there are other areas where you can fundraise and excel at it and it would actually do good. I just don't think it's helpful in the political realm, but that's just me. But thank you.
I do want to say one thing. My donors are not corporate. These are like everyday Americans in a variety of industries. They're not from corporations. And I want to say, I agree with you, but one party cannot unilaterally disarm. Both have to at the same time. So until both parties reform at the same time, until we do something about Citizens United, it doesn't make sense for one party to just say, okay, we're not going to do this anymore, But yeah, both parties it's just, especially with the advent of super PACs, just been insane. I've had people give tens of millions to, PACs like Future Forward and whatnot.
So they're not wealthy.
No, they're wealthy.
Yes, but I don't mean that they're not corporate. A lot of them, they could be any, like I had someone who owns a vineyard. They're not necessarily like corporations.
Got it.
It could be anything. Some of them are immigrants who worked hard all their lives to get here, but they're not, I don't mean they're not part of like huge conglomerates or anything. At least my donors are not. I can't speak to like everybody, but
okay. Yeah, I understand. All right, look, really interesting perspective. Hang in there.
I'll send you the graph that I talked about. I'll send it to your producer. It lays it out. You'll be stunned to see what the incentives are. I think it's really very eye-opening.
Thank you, Lindy.
All right, Lindy Li, thank you for joining us. Appreciate it. Every time you ring the bell below, an angel gets his wings. Totally not true, but it does keep you updated on our live shows.